Welcome to Real Talk. I'm your host, Tori Champa, and this week the films we're going to be reviewing are Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, Gone Girl, and The Judge. So let's get started. So the first film we're going to be reviewing today is Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, and it stars Steve Carell and Jennifer Gardner, and it's based on the children's book of the same name. The premise of the film revolves around a young boy named Alexander who feels out of place in his family as he feels he's the only one down on his luck.
For Alexander, life couldn't get worse.
I can't believe Elliot texted photoshopped pictures of me to the whole school.
Nice boobs, Alexander.
My black book!
Unbelievable.
For his family, life couldn't be better.
I got a call today. I have an interview for a game design firm.
You could be looking at the new vice president of Lone Hill Press.
Once I get my license tomorrow, I kind of have everything I've ever wanted. I'm hashtag blessed, you know?
But one day can change everything.
Shouldn't you guys be up?
So the first thing that I want to say before I go into the review is that The Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day falls into my favorite category of films. I love family films, I love animated films, and basically all films that people would consider children's movies. That being said, I just wanted to make it very clear that I'm not so much looking at this film in the eyes of a 20-year-old, but as a lover of this genre of film. That being said, the three categories we're going to review today are the acting, the script, and the similarities and/or differences to the original book. The acting overall is a complete mess, and there are no redeeming qualities about the child actors in this film. They all honestly could have been replaced by random people on the street. And this may be a fault of the writing because their characters are so unrelatable and so annoying, but they really just weren't given the chance to show off their skills, which just reflected poorly on their performance. Steve Carell ends up playing Steve Carell. He's funny, he makes quirky jokes, and oh, look at him, he's a typical dad. While Jennifer Gardner just plays every single movie mom that has a job. The star of the film ends up being Dick Van Dyke, as Dick Van Dyke. Now, if the star of the film ends up being a character who has a 5-minute cameo, that should really tell you how the rest of the acting is. The second thing that we're going to review is the script, which is the major downfall and probably one of the worst written films I've ever seen. Our daughter drinks an entire bottle of cough syrup. Ha ha, that's hilarious. We don't take her to the hospital. Our son wrecks a car to the point where the door falls off. Ha, he probably doesn't need to go to the hospital. Our baby eats a highlighter. Ha, he doesn't need to go to the hospital. Now, I know that films are not supposed to be realistic. They're fictionalized. But none of these things needed to be so dramatic as they were in the film, and it was very difficult to relate to the movie, which I feel like audiences were supposed to. I'm not going to let my daughter drink an entire bottle of cough syrup, so no, I don't know how that makes it a bad day because I wouldn't do that. I would be mad if my kid wrecked the car to that point and I would take him to the hospital, so no, I don't relate to that either. I wouldn't let my baby eat a highlighter, so no, I can't relate to that. It was just very unrelatable because of how dramatized everything was. The characters were also just obnoxious, and especially the characters that were Alexander's classmates. And it's clear that the writer of the script is so out of touch with how kids act in the 21st century. The final thing that we're going to review are the similarities and/or differences to the original book. The book goes through Alexander having a bad day. He wakes up with chewed gum in his hair, he stubs his toe, blah, 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 and it ends with his mom basically just saying, oh well, it was a bad day, tomorrow can't be worse. In the movie, Alexander has a bad day and then wishes upon everyone else that they have a bad day so they can understand how he feels. So more or less, the movie had nothing to do with the book besides the kid's name and that it's a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. The major difference, and I think this is what really affected the film, was the fact that in the book, Alexander is about 6 or 7, and in the movie, he's 12 and he's in middle school. When a 6 or 7-year-old complains about life, it's kind of cute because he has no idea how life actually works. When a 12-year-old in middle school is as angsty as a high schooler, it's not cute. It's really whiny and really annoying. And I think had the writer of the script taken this into consideration, the film could have done a lot better. Final verdict, please do not expose your child to such poor writing. The next film we're going to be reviewing is Gone Girl, starring Ben Affleck, Rosamund Pike, Neil Patrick Harris, Carrie Coon, and Tyler Perry, and it's based on a novel of the same name. The film revolves around a husband and the consequences he must face in the disappearance of his wife.
As you all know, my wife, Amy Elliott Dunn, disappeared 3 days ago. I had nothing to do with the disappearance of my wife. I have nothing to hide.
Sammy got friends we can talk to?
No, not really.
You don't know if she has friends, you don't know what she does all day, and you don't know your wife's blood type.
Just being a good guy, so everybody can see him being a good guy.
Well, you really don't like him, do you?
So the three things we're going to be reviewing for this film are the acting, the script, and the editing. The acting overall was excellent, and everyone did a really nice job as their characters. Rosamund Pike, however, in the very beginning, her character was very apathetic and very emotionless, but her performance picked up greatly by the end, which makes me think this was more supposed to be the development of her character, which would have been more of a fault of the writing, as she was too emotionless in the beginning. Neil Patrick Harris does an excellent job as his character and really shows off his skills. I've really only seen him in more comic roles, so seeing him as this more serious and unsettling character was really a nice change. The star, however, ends up being Carrie Coon as the twin sister of the main character because she shows such a range of emotions, from being the comic relief to also being the voice of reason, that it really moves the audience. The second thing we're going to review is the script, which is pretty faithful to the book, minus a few small differences here and there, but nothing too major. The one downfall would have to be the dialogue between Nick, who's Ben Affleck, and his wife, Pike, in the very beginning, because it seemed very unrealistic the way they were speaking to each other. That being said, having made it to the end of the film, it may have been a purposeful decision to make it so cliche. The other major downfall ends up being the ending, which was a complete disappointment, and it was very unrealistic for the characters that were created throughout its entirety. There were also a lot of plot holes that, by the end of the movie, left you with questions that I don't think necessarily were supposed to, which this is a fault of poor writing. Final thing we're going to review is the editing, which is terrible, especially in the first couple scenes and especially in the opening credits. The opening credits start by showing a bunch of establishing shots in this montage style, but the pictures are changing so often that your brain can't process what you're seeing. And on top of that, they added the opening credits and the text and the actors and the director, which you're supposed to be able to read 3 times through before it switches. You couldn't even read once. So between trying to read the text and also trying to process what you were seeing, it was very jarring for the audience. There were also a couple continuity issues where in one shot a character would be on one side of the room, and all of a sudden in the next shot the character would have magically made it to the other side of the room. That being said, overall final verdict, this is probably a movie that you should rent. So the final film we're going to be reviewing today is The Judge, starring Robert Downey Jr., Robert Duvall, Vera Farmiga, and Jeremy Strong, and it's about the estranged relationship between a father and his son, and the lengths at which the son will still go to protect his father.
How does it feel knowing every person you represent is guilty?
It's fine. Innocent people can't afford me.
All rise. Is there anything either counsel or care to add?
My mom passed away this morning.
Is this the first time your mother passed away, or is this something you do on all the cases you're about to lose?
First time.
So, Grandpa Palmer's dead too?
No, Grandpa Palmer's dead to me. It's like a figure of speech.
Sounds complicated. I should go with you.
Trust me, nobody wants to go to Carlinville, Indiana.
So the 3 things we're going to be reviewing for this film are the acting, the script, and the editing and lighting. The acting overall was actually pretty well-rounded, though the film definitely had its ups and downs. Robert Downey Jr. more or less plays his character of Tony Stark from Iron Man, though with much more emotion. And it's these emotional scenes that really make him stand out in the film. Robert Duvall, on the other hand, really could have been replaced by any other aging actor. And it's actually rumored that Jack Nicholson or Tommy Lee Jones was originally thought of for the part, and had either of them taken his place, the film may have fared a little bit better. He was just very apathetic in the beginning and emotionless, and even though he played the more raw scenes very well, it was his acting the rest of the film that sort of ruined it for me. Vera Farmiga is also a major downfall of this film as Robert Downey Jr.'s main love interest. She was completely unneeded as a character, but also she was very wooden, had no emotion, and just overall was awful every second she was on screen. The star ends up being Jeremy Strong, who plays Robert Downey Jr.'s brother in the film, who has a mental disability, and the way he plays a character with a mental disability is what really made him stand out. Instead of playing it up so much that the disability ended up defining his character, he played it so that you still loved the character, and the disability was more just a trait that he had, which is also a merit of good writing. That leads us into our next category of the script, which overall had its ups and downs. The dialogue was pretty decent throughout the entire film, and especially the relationship between Hank, who was Robert Downey Jr., and his brothers was very well developed. And as I mentioned before, the writing for Jeremy Strong's character was excellent. But overall, this film is exceptionally cliche. You have a father and son who don't get along, but then disaster strikes at home and the son has to go back to his cow country town. And then the father and son get into a fight because, oh, Dad, you don't understand me. Oh, son, you don't understand me. Etc., and the tropes just continue on. The love interest of Hank was also completely unneeded, as I mentioned before, and really just dragged down the film and made it a lot longer than it really needed to be. Final thing we're going to review is the editing and lighting, which was awful. Just really, really bad. The cuts that were made clearly had no consideration for the flow of the visuals on the screen. You had a heavy reliance on backlighting in all of the close-ups, which, for those of you who don't know, backlighting is usually the light that will hit the back of the actor's head, and it gives them more of that halo and the angelic look. Now, had it made sense in the context of the film, that would have been fine. It made no sense in the context of the film, though, and it was just really obnoxious. There were also a lot of times where the audio of the dialogue would fade out and the audio of the music would fade in, and used once or twice in a film is fine. It had to have been used at least 5 or 6 times, which really just made it a sore for your ears to hear. Final verdict, you can definitely skip it because you've probably seen a film just like it a billion times. This week on our TV review segment, we're going to be reviewing the series premiere of Mulaney on Fox, the series premiere of Selfie on ABC, the Season 3 premiere of The Mindy Project on Fox, as well as a review of Carmilla, an up-and-coming smash hit on YouTube.
Bad news, guys. It's Andre.
Oh, you're home. I was gonna leave a message. Okay.
Yes, you're gonna get paid. I just, Franco, money cannon, one blast.
I'm not going to complain about being single anymore because I have found a solution.
What if we just heard a gunshot right now?
Isn't suicide really funny? This is just one example of the awful jokes that are featured in Mulaney. The premise of the show is that the main character of Mulaney is trying to make his name in the comedy business. But with jokes like these, it's going to be really hard for that to happen. This is probably, by far, one of the worst shows I've ever watched in my entire life, and probably one of the most unfunny ones. It's very clear that it's trying to be a giant ripoff of Seinfeld, but it's going about it the wrong way. When a show has to make jokes about suicide and prostate exams like it's a haha funny deal, you know the show's not going to be funny. And yes, it's true that serious topics like this can be put in a humorous light and be good because, you know, they're something you can laugh about because it's a way to cope. But it has to be done in the right way. This is not done in the right way. Just laughing because, wouldn't it be funny if we hurt or shoot ourselves? That's not funny. So please do not go out of your way to watch this. If it's on TV, please switch the channel because this is clearly one of the worst television shows ever produced, and I give it about 6 episodes before it's canceled.
Tuesday, September 30th, 2 outsiders will teach each other.
You look amazing.
Right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you?
How to just be themselves.
Wow, you are wearing an enormous amount of fragrance.
Can't you say anything nice?
The premise of the show Selfie revolves around the main character of Eliza Dooley, who is completely obsessed with her friends online and her image online. But when one day she realizes she has no friends in real life, she recruits the help of a fellow co-worker to change her image. Overall, the show has some potential, and the pilot was rather entertaining, though a lot of information was shoved down our throats in the first couple minutes, which was very distracting and a little bit overwhelming for the audience. One big highlight, though, ends up being the editing and how they were able to incorporate the logos of a lot of social media websites into the real world. It will probably last a couple seasons. It's not my kind of show, so I probably won't be tuning in again, but if the premise of it sounds interesting to you, I would definitely recommend it.
I can't be open with you. If everything I say or do, the whole office is gonna know.
Danny, that's who I am. I need to be able to come into work and say to everyone, Danny and I had sex on the subway last night, and then get everyone's take on
But
it.
if this is gonna work out, you can't be like that anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Sure you could do that.
I can change the very core of me.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know the Mindy Project, as it goes into its 3rd season, it revolves around the main character, Dr. Mindy Lahiri, as she tries to juggle her job as a gynecologist as well as her social and love life. Now, often in TV shows, when the 2 main characters get together, a lot of the times the writing starts to dwindle, the chemistry is gone, but this is not the case with the Mindy Project. The show is just as strong as ever, and every episode since the premiere of the 3rd season has been just as great as the original season. I highly recommend this show, and it's one of my personal favorites, and you can definitely catch up online on all of what you missed.
Hey,
Excuse me, but who the hell are you?
Carmilla, I'm your new roommate, sweetheart.
Every 20 years, like clockwork, this girl shows up at Silas. And every time she does, a bunch of girls go missing. She's nocturnal, she's so strong, she's at least 80 years old, and she drinks blood.
Well, yeah, but we know she's a vampire. I mean, we've known that since the blood in the milk container, right?
The web series of Carmilla is based off the novella of the same name, and it revolves around the main character of Laura as she starts college and realizes quickly that her roommate is indeed a vampire. I'm not a huge fan of web series, and I never really was. I always just thought of them as a bunch of teenagers grabbing their mom's camcorder and recording themselves talk about nonsense. That was until I got addicted to Carmilla. The writing is absolutely amazing, and it leaves you on the edge of your seat episode after episode, and really you never really can guess what's coming. The acting parallels this because it's nice to see these people who maybe aren't so well known in the acting business portraying these characters so well and doing such a great job with the different emotions they're feeling that you almost feel like you're watching a Hollywood production. The entire quality of the show, from everything from the lighting, the cinematography, the format, is as good as any movie or television show out there and easily rivals it. I would highly, highly recommend it, and it's very addicting. You can easily find it by going onto YouTube and searching for Carmilla, and we're definitely eagerly awaiting each episode, and they air every Tuesday and Thursday. I highly recommend you watch this because honestly it is one of the best pieces of media out there right now. And now for a little bit of news from the entertainment industry. It's been recently announced that multiple stations have picked up the rights to a variety of different movies to make television shows out of them, such as Marley and Me, Rush Hour, as well as Ghost. How they're going to make television shows out of these movies is a little bit unclear and a little confusing, and it's kind of reflecting the idea that there is no more originality or creativity in Hollywood. And the list expands to over 20 different films. And if you want to see the entire list, you can easily just Google it and you'll get a bunch of different sources. Netflix has recently announced that for the 2015 season, they're going to be picking up the 10 seasons of Friends. Now this is great for anyone that's a fan of Friends and has Netflix, but unfortunately, the die-hard fans probably already own all 10 seasons on DVD and paid an arm and a leg for them. This just means that it will result in a bunch of seasons being sold on eBay. Our final news story comes from Fox, who has decided to drop American Dad from its programming, but luckily TBS has picked up the popular Seth MacFarlane cartoon. Why Fox has decided to drop it is a little unclear, though it is rumored they're trying to get away from their animation domination segment. Is this a great idea by Fox? Probably not, since the programming during this segment seemed to be their most popular. Just to go over the final verdicts of the films we reviewed today, Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day is one you can skip, and I beg you not to take your children to. Gone Girl is a film that you can rent, and The Judge is one you can skip because you've probably seen the premise a billion times. This has been Real Talk. I'm your host, Tori Ciampa, and thanks for watching.